Class 34. St. Thomas Aquinas, pray for us. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. So, we did it, sweetie. A whole year of philosophy. And this is our final. What for you cry?
It's over.
Oh, it's over, yes. Boo. Yes. So we did metaphysics, or as that one transcriber called it, as if it was a medical term, metaphysics, M-E-D-Y, stash physics. In one of my TV transcripts, somebody who transcribed it, when I said metaphysics, they had metaphysics, as if it's a medical problem. Anyway, so we did metaphysics and philosophical psychology, the two foundational philosophical courses, and the final class today is on, I should actually put appetites, put a lousy pen if I got, emotions.
It's a lousy pen to go with a lousy board.
And habits, yes. Okay, and there's quite a bit to talk about regarding this. Emotions are movements of the sense appetite. You want to put that down. You want to write that down.
Emotions?
Emotions are movements of the sense appetite. But I want to start out with a very generic definition of the word appetite, which maybe you've never heard before. You really only come upon this in philosophy, Thomistic philosophy probably. And that is, the word appetite comes from ad petre, means to seek towards. Every agent acts for the sake of an end. And when an agent acts for its end, it is following, in the broadest sense of the term, its appetite. Now, there are two applications of the word appetite: natural appetite and elicited appetite. Natural appetite is going to be kind of a new concept, explaining something obvious. And elicited appetite is what we think of when we usually think of the word appetite.
Wait, how do you spell the other one?
Elicited, E-L-I-C-I-T-E-D.
E-L-I-C-I-T-E-D.
So a natural appetite is the built-in ordination of a thing to act according to its end. For example, the eye has an appetite to see. The ear has an appetite to hear. The stone has the appetite to fall to the ground. This is a broad sense of the word appetite, following, acting for its final end, and it's built in. It's a built-in ordination. And we have no choice about this. Our ears hear whether we want them to or not. Sometimes when the music's really bad, we wish we could shut off the hearing. Okay. So, and the stone, too. The stone has the appetite to fall. Natural appetite. So that's really all we have to say about natural appetite, because the rest of what we're going to be talking about is elicited appetite that is consequent upon knowledge. We know something is good and we go after it. Even the animals, speaking in a strictly non-intellectual, we're speaking in a strictly non-intellectual manner, a strictly organic operation. The animal, quote unquote, knows that something is good. His senses tell him that. And there's two types of appetites. There's the sensate appetite, those things that appeal to our senses. And there is the intellectual appetite. What's another word for the intellectual appetite? The will.
The will.
Correct, the will. Usually, I'm doing this a little backwards because usually, well, I shouldn't say usually, because when you look at different books and treatments on moral theology, philosophical psychology, sometimes things are in different order. Oftentimes, the emotions and the sense appetites will go first, and then they'll teach intellect and will. I've done it the other way around simply because it's the way it worked out. Okay. But as we're going to see, this class is a very good springboard into ethics, but we'll see that at the end. All right, so the intellectual appetite. Now, we're not going to talk much about the intellectual appetite. That is seeking the good, apprehended as good, seeking justice, charity, all these things. But what we're talking about with emotions and appetites is very much in the sensible order, that which we have in common with animals. And emotion is any movement of the sense appetite. The emotion is any movement of the sense appetite. Now, we talked about the sense appetites before. We're going to talk about them a little more. The concupiscible appetite and the irascible appetite. We're not talking about them yet. I'm just giving you a reminder when we talk about appetites here. That's what we're talking about, and that's what animals have too. Animals have concupiscible and irascible appetite. Now, a couple of points about emotions. Number one, the emotions have no single sense. In other words, emotions are not only triggered by hearing or only triggered by tasting something, but all of our senses will trigger, any one or all of our senses can trigger an emotion, will invoke an emotion. Also, emotions are formally psychic and materially organic. Okay, they start with the operation of the internal sense organs, and with man also the intellect is involved. And then they are materially organic. If we're hooked up to electrodes in a science experiment, they can measure our emotions. They can measure that our heart is starting to beat faster, or all these types of things that the scientists have come up with to measure eye movement and reaction and things like that. Okay, so they are materially organic, but remember, we are not just a pile of atoms. We're not just material. We are intellect and will. We are hylomorphic beings. And so with us, we always have this mixture going on of the intellect being present even in the appetites and the emotions. And also we know from our proper hierarchy that the intellect is supposed to control the lower passions, control the emotions. Before the fall, we were in perfect order. After the fall, the secondary became the primary, and the passion started to rule our intellect. Okay, so the soul is what moves the body. Tears don't make us sad. Okay, we're sad and we cry and produce tears. So that's where I was saying we are body and soul. The intellect and emotions are connected, and there's that corresponding intellect between body and soul. Now, we have here a very interesting definition of emotion that you may want to write down. And it's kind of long, but here we go. I'll read it through first, and then I'll read it through slowly so you can write it down. Emotion is a physical movement toward a sensible good or away from a sensible evil, elicited by sense knowledge with an organic change, preparing an animal for action, fight or flight. I'm going to say that again.
Slowly.
Slowly so you can write it down. Emotion, the definition. Emotion is a physical movement toward a sensible good.
A physical movement toward a sensible good.
Or away from a sensible evil. Elicited by sense knowledge.
Evil. Elicited by sense knowledge.
With an organic change. For example, the heart starts to beat faster. The adrenaline You get a rush of adrenaline, okay? With an organic change. And I said our scientific sensors can pick this up and measure it. By sense knowledge with an organic change, preparing an animal for action.
Preparing an animal for action.
At colon, fight or flight. That's more, the example given here by Dr. Burnett is more of the irascible appetite, but it's all the concupiscible appetite. You lunge towards that hamburger. Or for the first time in 3 years, I can have a taco. All right?
You're getting too...
All right? Now, it's a movement of the soul that is accompanied by an organic change. It's not just, again, material operation. This is the mistake that some of our modern scientists make, is because they can measure these things on their instruments, then they say it's merely a material operation. No, it is, as it says here, formerly psychic, that is formerly of the soul, and materially organic. Now, remember too, animals have these things. Animals have passion. Animals have emotion. Animals have sense appetite. I just got a letter of complaint because Father Gruner and I did a program about the fact that animals do not have intelligence, and someone wrote and they were very upset saying, "Oh no, my dog is intelligent. He has passions. He shows affection." That is...
Are you going to write him back?
Oh yeah. I hope because...
Refute it point by point?
Well, it's not so much that, it's just that people don't have this formation anymore. We should have gotten this in high school. This basic philosophical psychology. What is man? What is an animal? What is the difference? What are the similarities? So people wouldn't make these mistakes. But they confuse, and animal researchers do this all the time, they confuse organic operation with intellectual activity. Because they don't know what the intellect is. And they don't know what the organic activity is, the 5 external senses, the 4 internal senses, the fact that animals have those 5 external senses, 4 internal senses, and in many instances they use them better than we do because it's all they've got. And they do a lot with them. So anyway, they have passions, they have emotions, they have sense appetites, they do not have intellect or will. Now, we've talked about these before. The concupiscible appetite and the irascible appetite. Concupiscible appetite, colon, and that is the simply obtained good or the simply avoided evil. Okay, something that's simple. As I said, you see the BLT sandwich, it's on your plate, you pick it up and eat it. You're responding to the concupiscible appetite. Or you're walking down the street and a block ahead of you, you see that there's a Great Dane on the loose. So you just turn around and walk back to your house, okay? That's an easily avoided evil because it's a block away.
Okay.
Things like that, okay? Now, the irascible appetite, however, is the difficult to obtain good and the difficult to avoid evil. And as Dr. Waters would always say, acts, powers, and habits are specified by their formal object, and these two appetites are distinguished by their formal object. And the formal object is exactly what I just gave you. The easily obtained good, the easily avoided evil, that's the formal object of the concupiscible appetite. The difficult attained good, the difficult avoided evil, that's the formal object of the irascible appetite. All right? I gave the example of eating the sandwich. You're eating your sandwich. Now, you go to pick up your bacon cheeseburger, and I block you. You're just about to put it in your mouth, and I block you. What do you do? Or especially if a goofy friend blocks you. What do?
I throw the sandwich.
Well, then you lose your good,
Okay.
right? But you push him away and shove the sandwich into your mouth and go yum yum. All right. That's one of the points. These things usually arise in the concupiscible appetite. I want to eat this cheeseburger. Move into the irascible when it becomes difficult to obtain, and then ends in the concupiscible. I get my burger because I fought for it. It even tastes better since I fought for it. Yum yum.
It's got the battle scars.
It's got the smell of victory over it. All right.
Okay.
So the difficult obtained good, the difficult avoided evil. Difficult to avoid evil. The creepy thing that comes to mind is you find a bat in your room, and then you pick up a baseball bat and you start swinging towards that bat. What does the bat do? Fight or flight? It's flight. It's trying to get away, and it's difficult because you're swinging in every direction, and you're probably pretty incensed yourself, and your emotions are at a peak, motivated by colossal fear. I'm going to kill this thing before it bites me. All right, or you could do that with the other time. You get a bucket and trap him like we did before. But anyway, yes. So that's the irascible appetite. Now, I've always given the example of the mama bear protecting her cubs, or even your pet cat protecting her newborn litter of kittens. You go near that cat, it starts hissing at you. You go near that bear, you don't want to go near it because the bear will grab. That's the irascible appetite at work. Okay, that is also protecting the good and that a perceived danger. Now, what's interesting is I've been talking about appetites, but I said we were going to talk about emotions, and this is why it all locks together. It's like the Apostles' Creed. Everything really is not just a series of individual points that we believe, that we accept, but when we study it, we find one thing hangs on the next. You can't really pull out one without the whole edifice falling. Same thing here. All these things lock together because the emotions are movements of these two appetites. The emotions connected to the concupiscible appetite are love, I'll put it over here, love, desire, pleasure, hate, aversion, and displeasure. Okay, these are the emotions from the concupiscible appetite. We love the burger, we desire the burger, we take pleasure in the burger. Okay? We hate artichokes, we have aversion to artichokes.
We take displeasure.
We are displeased when we see artichokes on our plate. Okay? Alright, sometimes that can turn into the irascible too, but no, anyway. So, but irascible, what are the emotions involved with? It's interesting because we're given the basic Thomistic definitions. Now, it's funny because modern psychologists will study man, and they will come to a lot of the same conclusions. I shouldn't say a lot. They will come to similar conclusions about our makeup, but oftentimes they'll give these things a lot of different names. Like, if you know somebody studies just studying secular psychology, you'll find that there's different, and sometimes St. Thomas breaks them down pretty simply because he understands the hierarchy of things. The modern approach is to say that we have 258 emotions. You know, and they all have all these different names, but they're actually one. A lot of them are just one emotions with subsets to them.
Subcategories.
Yeah. So anyway, irascible. The irascible is hope, and we're talking about animals here. The animal having hope, despair, fear, daring, certain amount of organic courage, as it were, and anger. Okay, these are movements. These are the emotions that spring from the irascible appetite. movements that spring from the irascible appetite. For example, you say, well, how can a dog have a hope? Well, if I hold up a piece of chicken to the...
And it's jumping in the hope that it will get
yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's going,
It,
okay.
it has this doggy hope that you're going to be a nice and drop it and
down.
not trick it by dropping a bar of ivory soap in its mouth. Right. Okay. Yeah, so that's the hope. When the tiger sees the antelope, it chases it because it has this hope, as it were, that it's going to catch it. But what happens, and you see it in nature films, when the antelope outruns the tiger? At one point, the tiger stops running. At one point, the tiger gives up.
That's a despair.
At one point, the tiger gives into despair. Now, the difference, of course, is the animal has no concept of hope. He just does it. The animal has no concept of despair. He doesn't walk back to his den and say, boy, oh boy, I was that close to that antelope, that close. And then he just...
And I'm never going to do it again.
That tricky turn that antelopes do, and I lost my supper, and I'm sad. Okay, animals don't reflect. Now, humans, when we have hope, when we have these emotions, they're also connected to our intellect, that we reflect on them. And also, all of these things for the animal, love, desire, pleasure, hate, aversion, displeasure, hope, despair, fear, daring, and anger. Daring is, as I said, when the cougar is defending its young, it's going to go out, and you'll see sometimes it'll do some things that look like certain death, because it's going after, it's protecting its young against a bigger, stronger animal. But that daring, as it were, is what prompts the animal to fight even a beast that's bigger and stronger. So, but when they do these things, remember, the animal has immediate sensible knowledge of the singular only, the singular object. It doesn't understand concept, and it doesn't reflect on what it's doing. And as I said, it won't go back to its cave and said, gosh, by golly gosh, I was really hungry and I wanted that antelope, especially that one, because it was fat. It looked great. It doesn't reflect on it, okay? It's gone. If it sees an antelope again, the sense memory kicks in. Aha, that's edible. I'm going to go get it. Whereas hope and despair, we see, you want to see all of these emotions in work? Watch Sense and Sensibility. They're all there. Every one of them are there. But the difference with the characters in Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility and the animal is the girls in Sense and Sensibility are reflecting. Hope. Eleanor has hope when she meets Edward that she might have found Mr. Wonderful. And she thinks about it when Edward's not around. Okay? But then that leads her to wonder when all of a sudden, when he just disappears and doesn't show up at all. And then despair when she meets the Miss Steele. And also, and when she hears about the Honorable Miss Morton. Right? So what is this is, these are all things that she's thinking about without the sensible object in front of her. So we have all these emotions working also with our intellect. Okay, working also with our intellect. And as I said, we are that strange creature, part animal, part angel, part animal, as it were. And as, of course, people who have animals and love animals, they make the mistake of anthropomorphizing, to attribute to the animal something, characteristics the animal does not have. Now, our concupiscible appetite goes towards the sense goods, but the intellectual appetite is the will. Very good.
Human nature adequately understood. Sorry.
Yeah, is the will, and that is seeking the immaterial good, seeking the good as the concept. For example, The intellectual good is not just recognizing the veal parmesan and lunging for it, but the intellectual appetite, the will. I'm at somebody's house, I accidentally break their window. I tell them, I will pay for it, I'll pay to have it repaired, I will pay to have a new one installed. Okay, that is the intellectual concept of justice that I owe then, and animals no concept of that. And this is why the will is for the good. The concept of good, sense of justice. We see somebody who has suffered some sort of injustice, and we want to try to right that wrong, or to try to help them out of their situation. So it's different from the appetite for the sirloin steak. This is will. This is the will in operation, the intellectual appetite, and it's part of our rational nature. Animals also have this because one of the things this person who wrote to me said, well, the dog. There's stories of dogs who go and lie on the master's grave, and that shows that the dog knows Ned, remembers Ned, loves Ned, and understands that Ned is dead. Right? Well, what you have to understand about that is always a sensible affinity. It's a sensible love. And the dog does have a sense of loss. Even dogs sometimes, because of the day in, day out structure of things, they start to go when their master's going to be home soon. They can tell by they have all this sensory operation of the way the sun is coming in the windows. They connect that with when they're, the angle of the sun as the sun's going down. They connect those images, that association of images, with the master coming home. People mistake that as intelligence. People mistake the dog lying on the grave as it's a sensible affinity, and the dog has some sort of sense of loss, and the master's not there. The master's not here anymore, he's down there. And you'll notice too, people say that about animals, but to my knowledge, you only see that in dogs. If our friend who has the snake would die, I don't think you would see the snake slither over to the grave.
Curl up on the tombstone.
If Farmer Jones dies, the cows don't show up at the funeral. Or the pigs or the lambs. They don't show up at the funeral. You only see it in dogs, and that's because it's part of the dog's nature, the domesticated dog, to be what is called man's best friend. Okay, that's part of the dog's nature. So, again, animals only know the sensible, singular, external object. And as I said, the animals operating with the 5 external senses, 4 internal senses, and the fact that that's all they've got, they use them oftentimes in a superior way than we do. Now, we get to the point of habit. Habit is, and you can write this down as a definition, habit is a more or less permanent disposition to act well or to act badly.
More or less.
A more or less permanent disposition.
Okay, hold on.
To act well or to act badly. Now, all these appetites and emotions we talked about, these are all powers. These are all powers of the soul. Powers is something we're born with. The 5 external senses, the 4 external senses, the appetites, the emotions, the intellect, the will. These are things, they are innate. A habit, so a power is something innate, what we're born with. A power is something innate. A habit is something acquired. Okay? And again, a more or less permanent disposition to act well or to act badly. Very interesting, too. At one point, when Dr. Burnett is teaching this class, he just stops dead and he says, you cannot do ethics unless you understand the theory of habits. It is a critical concept. And we study habits not in ethics, but in philosophical psychology, because in philosophical psychology we're talking about what man is, how he works, how he's constituted. And once we know that, then we can do ethics. And man is a creature of habit. And he says, if you don't understand this, you can never do ethics properly. We cannot operate without habits. And I'm not talking about, whether we have the habit of some sort of good habit, like, I don't know, cleaning up after ourselves. We're not talking about that. We're talking about really basic things like walking. Okay, walking is a habit. We have to learn it. Once we learn it, we do it without thinking. It makes the job easy. If we did not have the habit of walking, what would happen every time we stood up out of a chair?
We'd fall over.
We'd have to learn to walk all over again. Okay? Same thing with driving. Driving is a habit. When you start, it's scary. You're getting the feel of everything. But through repetition, you develop the habit to the point where it's you do it, hopefully not without thinking, but it's part of your makeup now. Okay. After a stroke, people have to relearn basic skills. They have to learn, like a little baby, how to drink a cup of water without spilling it all over yourself. And that's why for children, games, playing, is so important, because that is where they learn their habits of basic movement, of basic operations, of interaction. And so we form a habit by repeating an action over and over again. We perfect the habit by repetition. Father Collins, repetition is the secret of success. Repetition is the secret of success. And with viola, when you have a hard passage, what do you have to do?
Drill it.
You have to drill it. You have to play it 1,000 times. Slowly, and then a little more quickly, a little more cheaply. Okay, and you're developing, as it were, the habit, the accustomization, the habit of playing this, so that you can play it. You have the habit of the Bach concerto, because you can play it. So, a good operative habit is called what?
A virtue.
Very good. A virtue.
It's a cake.
A good operative habit is a virtue. A bad operative habit is a vice. Now, we're speaking regarding normal. We're not really talking about moral virtues here, although it's the same principle. A good operative habit is a virtue. A bad operative habit is a virtue. But a good natural virtue, for example, good handwriting. Okay. Having good handwriting is a virtue. Having bad handwriting is a vice. A 6-year-old sucking his thumb is a vice. He's not committing a sin. He doesn't have to go to confession for it. It's not going to bar him from going to heaven. So that's why it's crucial to develop good habits, ourselves, so that we can perform our actions easily. And we do it by repetition. Dr. Burnett would tell the story of his aunt worked in this huge bank, I guess in Michigan, where he grew up. And when he was little, she took the little Dennis in to see the vault. And the vault door, he said, weighed a couple of tons. It was this massive vault door. And if you tried to push this door, it wouldn't budge. But the door was so precisionally balanced. So what you would do is you would get your forefinger and you would gently push the door if it was open. And you would just keep applying pressure and the door would start to move. And you would keep applying the pressure and the door would move more, and the door would move more quickly. And that is the formation of a habit. You start and you keep at it, and at first it's hard, but then the more you push, the more, as it were, repetition of the action, the more applying the action, the easier it is to move. Then once that door was moving, you couldn't stop it. You couldn't stop it by just standing in front of it and putting your hand out. It would knock you down and hurt you in the process. You had to stop it the same way. If it was moving, you would put your finger on the other side of it and you would start to apply counter pressure just a little bit, and a little more, and a little more, and a little more, and eventually the door would slow down and stop. And that is Dr. Bennett's very good example of developing a habit. We start, we keep at it, and the more we do it, and the more it becomes ingrained, as it were, the easier it becomes. And also it shows, once a habit is formed, that it's hard to stop it. That's why we try not to form bad habits, because they're very hard to stop. Overeating. If we have the habit of overeating, one day we say, no, I'm not going to do it.
Like Tasmanian devil.
Yeah. The next day we do it again. And the next day we do it again. Now there's stories of people who have done great for 6 months and then in the middle of the night go to the fridge and have an all-out binge. They eat everything in sight. Whatever's there.
Chairs, silverware.
And they have to start all over again because they relapse. Okay, habits are hard to break. But we start to, by saying no to ourselves, we develop mastery over the appetite. So the habit makes the act easier to perform. We also have, of course, we know from temperaments, we have certain inclinations. And the habits that we form are part of the character formation, because maybe somebody is by nature, say, not a combative person. Just not combative. Just, you have your opinion, okay, I'm not going to argue. Well, we really can't pride ourselves in saying, well, I'm not argumentative, if we're just following our natural bent. Now, someone who is very in your face and argumentative, if they start to work on controlling that, then they are actually trying to master something that's out of control. Or those who might be timid, we have to really muster up the courage to stand up for something. Whereas the other person, they're just
doing what
they just jump into it. Okay, so we could be if we're just following our natural bent, we can't naturally necessarily call it. It's virtue in the sense that we're doing the right thing, but it's not as acquired as someone who had the opposite tendency and then overcame it. So, I think I talked about all this already. The fact that the animal has the singular, and it goes to hope or despair or to love or desire or to hate only when it's in front of us. We can bring the images up and then have the emotions all over again. We can brood on things and have the emotions, or we can get more angry. Now I really realize what that crud said to me. Ew, I didn't get it at first. So our intellect has all this interplay with these emotions. So the whole point is, we gave this little drawing here, the reason has to control the passions, the reason has to control the appetite, the reason has to control the emotions, and we are out of order due to original sin. It's something that requires the knowledge of how man works, and the fact, for example, that our imagination, we can choose to think about something else. Sometimes it's very hard. I just can't stop thinking about this, and you have to try to crowd it out with something else. Now, I think this is the last point that we're going to make. It is the last point we're going to make. And that is, of course, we're going to get more into the fact that how the passions can somewhat mitigate our guilt. There are things called crimes of passion. That someone is just so overwhelmed with passion that they act, and when they come to themselves, they say, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Like in West Side Story.
Yes, yeah, in West Side Story. So there's one example I wanted to give, and I don't know. Yes, okay. Yeah, that's why we work to control our emotions. If we're prone to anger, there's the old thing, you count to 10. Count to 10, give yourself a little time. before you react. And of course, this immediate flaring up of emotions is the great, where do we really see this playing out, particularly in our time? Social network discussions. Facebook, texting, email. How many times do you hear, and I've seen them, the people will write something, they'll have in a white hot surge of emotion, press send. The minute they press send, they say, oh gosh, I shouldn't have done that. And it's too late. It's out there. That's the danger. That's one of the dangers of this instant communication. You can just fire off your emotions and then it's too late. You ever watch some of the Facebook discussions?
Yeah, they're great. I sit back with popcorn.
How quickly they degenerate into an all-out shouting match. They'll start talking about this at that point. It might start somewhat civil, but by the end it's, oh yeah, well, to you. And I bet you that discussion all flared up within the space of about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the danger of social networking. The fact that you can, and especially now, with youngsters having very little sense of the intellect control the emotions and just being one big blob of emotion. I find that offensive. Then social networking can be really the greatest destroyers of friendships on the planet.
I can.
So, the final point then is, and we'll talk more about the relations of the passion and how it's mitigating circumstances to our actions, and we'll do that more in ethics. But the final point is, and you've heard it said many times, the sense object stimulates the sense appetite. And what happens when the appetite is stimulated? We act. Prepares the animal for fight or flight, as the definition said earlier. Sense object stimulates the sense appetite. Sense appetite launches us into action. So, if we want to control our actions, we have to control the sense objects that are put in front of us, or we have to avoid those sense objects that we know stimulate our appetite and stimulate us into bad actions, or even look for things that will give us an appetite for good actions. When I started playing guitar, I was playing Light My Fire and Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog and Blue Suede Shoes and the standard, young guitar. I mean, I was in 6th and 7th grade. The standard, youngster guitar
Smoke
repertoire.
on the Water.
Well, Smoke on the Water wasn't out yet.
Oh.
But in any event.
What did you use for your right of way?
Well, yeah. And even though my father was a great jazz guitarist, and I had that influence, so that was good. But when I was in 8th grade, Don, I'll just call him Don, he was out of high school. He was actually a teacher at that point. He was a friend of a crowd that my eldest sister ran around with, and he played classical guitar. And I saw, for the first time in my life, someone sit in front of me and play classical guitar. That was something that stimulated my appetite and launched me into action. I want to learn how to do that. Okay, so, and I did. I mean, I was never a Segovia, but I learned fingerstyle. Okay, and it opened up a whole new world. The sense object stimulating the sense appetite that launches us into action, that is for good or that is for bad, and that is why we seek good friends, we seek good objects, that our appetites are directed the right way, because for our actions to be directed the right way, our appetites have to be directed the right way. And for the appetites to be directed the right way, we have to have the proper sense objects in front of us or around us. Okay, now, this is part of the problem, of course, with what's called modern sex education. They have these youngsters who now have all these hormones running through their bodies, never had it before. They present all these pictures They present all these descriptions that stimulate the sense appetite, and then they say, okay, now you have to avoid this. It is a complete contradiction. It is a denial of how man works. Now, are they stupid, or are they doing it on purpose? I think they're doing it on purpose. Someone asked Alan Guttmacher, the president of Planned Parenthood, how do we keep the abortion industry alive? And he said, sex education in the classrooms. Something designed that's supposed to be doing the opposite, that actually stimulates. When you just isolate this one topic and talk about it every day, sex, what's going to happen? There was this modern teacher, attractive woman. I see no difference between sex education and teaching mathematics, she said to Dr. Waters. Dr. Waters said, okay, tonight, let's the two of us sit in my car from midnight to 3 o'clock in the morning. What do you want to talk about, sex or mathematics? She paused and said, you've made your point. It's the second most powerful instinct that we have, only under self-preservation, to keep us alive. And they throw it. Now, the way you handle this is the way the church has always handled it, within the context of the entire moral law, within the context of all of ethics. It doesn't just hang all by itself. Within the context of the Ten Commandments, within the context of the four cardinal virtues, within the context of natural law and ethics and right reason. That's how you teach it as part of an overall, because this, controlling this, is part of concupiscence, which is a subsetting of temperance. Okay? So, the sense object stimulates the sense appetite. You don't just teach this to youngsters and then think that they are not going to be animated to action. So, I think I'm about to close here. I think we're done. Oh, and this is why, too, a nation that is awash in bad Hollywood movies and bad internet things, that's why you're going to have rampant immorality. You can't go down the street without some sort of stimulation. Bam, 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 bam. And what's that going to do to the nation? Well, St. Thomas Aquinas says that the first fruit of unchastity is blindness of spirit. So the Vatican takes a poll. Well, most Catholics don't accept Catholic teaching on moral matters. Yeah. Well, what do you expect? The teachers haven't been teaching it, and the Hollywood and the purveyors of the new paganism have been pumping the population full of bad images that will stimulate the appetite, that will stimulate them to the wrong actors, launch them into the wrong actions. And then adopting that lifestyle, the result of that is blindness of spirit, and all of a sudden, well, there's nothing wrong with this. Everybody thinks this way. Blindness of spirit. So, it's how we work. Philosophical psychology, sense object stimulates the sense appetite controls and stimulates the sense actions. This is how we work. And this is why, of course, studying philosophical psychology is so important. We have to study philosophical psychology so that we know what man is and how he works. And it's very interesting, Father Brennan, do I have the quote here? Did I put it here? Yeah, Father Brennan, in I think it's his book, he says, mistakes about natural law come from a misunderstanding of human nature. Don't understand human nature, then how do you understand natural law? Mm-hmm. Okay, and this is what scares me too about this upcoming synod in the Vatican. Now they're talking about, well, since our people don't accept the basic moral teaching, maybe we need a new approach to natural law. Well, you can't have a new approach to natural law without changing human nature, which you can't do. And we know whatever they have regarding natural law, they've abandoned Thomism for so long, they're not going to go back to the scholastic teaching. What we need is to turn back to the teaching that the people should have had, And the people who reject it, let them reject it, but there's going to be thousands, millions of people who, when they hear it, it's going to click. Because what's the one thing that we have seen throughout this entire course on metaphysics and philosophical psychology?
It's common sense.
It's common sense. It tallies with common sense. It just tallies. It is the natural metaphysics of human intelligence. It's a detailed exposition of what we all know instinctively. This is what's needed. And these people are saying we need a new approach to natural law. Heaven knows what we're going to end up with. But a number of us will be fighting this. So, we have to learn about human nature first before we do ethics. And this little course that we've had really was somewhat spotty because of my schedule and really the basics. I don't have do I have Father Brennan's book here? Father Brennan's book on Thomistic psychology is 350 pages. The section on habits alone is about 30 pages. So there's a lot. There's a lot there. And we're just giving the basics here. That was the whole point. And this is what prepares us for the next semester, which is ethics. Ethics, here's your first class in ethics. Ethics is a philosophical science, a practical science of how man ought to act in practice to obtain his final end, which is true happiness. That's the whole purpose of ethics. And ethics is the science that aims at imparting the art. And when we say art, we say the practice, the human practice. The art, imparting the art of applying its principles in producing good acts of the will and good acts of the mind. So that's what we'll start to study in September. That's what we'll start to study. You're ready for it now. And that's the first semester of the next school year will be on ethics, and it's going to be a blast. So that's it. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost. This recording is produced by Olteen Library Services. Visit us on the web at www.olteen.org. That's www.oltyn.org, olteen.org, or write to us at Olteen Library Services, 2316 Delaware Avenue, PMB 325, Buffalo, New York, 14216. Please check our website or ask for our catalog of traditional Catholic cassettes, CDs, and DVDs.